I call the Honourable Member David Clendon.
Tēnā koe, Mr. Speaker.
Tēnā koe.
Kei te mihi nui kia koutou. Kei te mihi nui ki ngā rangatira, ngā kuia o Ngati Makino, o Ngai Tamanuhiri, haere mai ki tēnei whare. So before speaking to the substance of these bills, I'd just like to acknowledge the process that we're using tonight, hearing these bills in cognate, which is not rare, but nor is it a common occurrence. And I think it's important to acknowledge that this is a practical measure agreed to by all parties in the House, and the purpose of hearing these bills, reading these bills together, is in order to advance their progress through the House as swiftly as can be done. It is important that we do this quickly. The bills are responding to claims which are some 2 decades old, and of course refer to events of a century and a half ago or more. And I think it's important to note that hearing these bills in one reading in no way diminishes the importance of each as a standalone bill. To the contrary, it is a reflection of the importance that this House puts on getting these matters resolved to the satisfaction of those who are most directly affected by them. So the Green Party will be supporting these bills through the House, as is our want with settlement bills. We do so as ever, while acknowledging also the imperfections of these bills. They can never be all that we would wish them to be, nor inevitably they cannot and they do not compensate in total for all that has been lost over many generations. They cannot restore the material wealth, the land, the well-being that was lost over many generations, and they certainly cannot compensate in a full and a complete way for the personal suffering and loss which has been the hallmark of so many of Māori people since the signing of the treaty, in fact. I think that reflects on a genuine generosity of spirit of Māori, and specifically tonight of these iwi and hapu represented here, that they are willing to accept less than could fairly be claimed in order to move on, in order to re-establish a more positive relationship between Crown and Māori, and critically to provide an economic base so that the iwi and hapu can dictate their own future, can make their own way in the world as they did prior to these unfortunate events which took away from them, in many cases, the ability to make their own way economically, socially, culturally, and in every other way. So I'd like particularly to reflect on the sections in the two bills, the Crown's acknowledgements and the Crown's apologies to the affected iwi and hapu. In the Ngati Makino Bill, Section 6 and 7, and Section 8 of the Ngai Tamanuhiri Bill. I think often observers and casual observers of these processes perhaps underestimate the value of the Crown's apologies and acknowledgements of wrongdoing over many years. Not to underestimate the more practical, tangible compensation which is offered, but it's important that people recognise that having the mana restored as it ought to be, the Crown recognising its own shortcomings and wrongdoing, does resonate as an incredibly significant and important part of these bills. It does reflect on and give us a place to begin rebuilding, as I said, that 172-year-old relationship. And those who denigrate, or those who are simply ignorant of some of the history of this country and the history that underlies these settlement bills, would do well, I think, to inform themselves. One of the inherent value of these bills, they give us an extraordinary reference point. They do record the history of these events in a way which enables people to read and to better understand why we are moving through these. So having celebrated Waitangi just a week or two ago, inevitably that time of year brings out those who would suggest that Māori should get over it, or that those who in a more benign way even might suggest that we leave the past in the past. I think they need to read their history, recognise it is only in some cases 2 or 3 generations, and in fact even that existing generations continue to suffer from wrongdoings, and it is an important part of our history. So I do think that, as I say, the parts of these bills are worth reading, recording, and I would like to quote briefly from one or two of them. For example, the Ngati Makino bill, section 6, where the Crown acknowledges, and I quote, that the people of Ngati Makino have long sought redress for their grievances, and the Crown's withdrawal from earlier negotiations has had a detrimental effect on Ngati Makino. Acknowledgement that Makino suffered loss of life at the hands of Crown's forces, that confiscation of land in the Eastern Bay of Plenty affected all Ngati Makino, even those who had not been in conflict with the Crown at this time. It refers to the unjust, indiscriminate and breach of the Treaty of Waitangi and its principles in the confiscation of that land. It is acknowledged that Ngati Makino's physical, cultural and spiritual well-being was compromised by the loss of their land, and that this suffering and hardship has continued to the present day. These are strong words. This is a very powerful and open acknowledgement of wrong that was done, and it is appropriate that these words are written and spoken, and I do, as I say, encourage people to familiarise themselves, not only with these bills, but with the increasing number of bills which are, and indeed acts, where the Crown's position, the Crown's liability and its admission of liability are finally being recorded. Similarly, in the Ngai Tamanuhiri bill, the Crown's apology refers to the Crown's many failures to respect Ngai Tamanuhiri rangatiratanga, or to protect Tamanuhiri from being left virtually landless and economically marginalised. Like many Māori and those who understand better, are constantly irritated and offended by claims that Māori somehow are unable to see to their own economic and social well-being. Clearly, much of the disadvantage suffered by Māori in the present day is a direct result, a direct outcome of the marginalisation, of the taking away of the economic base that Māori depended on and indeed did very well on, because we know the history even of the 1860s, where the New Zealand economy was a Māori economy, and a very successful economy at that. And it is the events that are recorded in these bills which took away that base, and it is a pleasure to be part of a process, albeit a very, very minor part of the process of restoration of that economic base, as well as the mana which is owed to this. Sir, there is much that can be said and will indeed be said at later readings about this. I would simply finally like to pass on greetings and good wishes, in particular to Ngai Tamanuhiri, of my colleague, fellow MP, Catherine Delahunty, who was engaged quite closely in the front line, one might say, of the fights over a number of years to restore Te Kuri o Pawa to their rightful owner, to restore access and the mana of that significant place, significant both to Māori and Pākehā, young neck's head, Te Kuri o Pawa. She sends her regards, and her direct engagement will be referred to in a later speech. So finally, sir, as I begun, I do commend these bills. We will offer our support to them and look forward to their swift resolution. Kia ora.
I call the honourable member to Iraroa Flavel.